Chapter 18. The Lower Vault. The crack in the wall widened, stone fractured with a sound like breaking ice. Cold air rushed into the hidden chamber. Not cool air, not damp air. Cold. The kind found deep underground where sunlight had never reached. Everyone stared. The floodwater continued draining through the floor. Fast now. Much faster than before. The current pulled loose papers into the darkness below. Entire decades of records vanished through widening cracks. Evelyn immediately moved toward the witness box. "We take what we can." Marcus shook his head. "There isn't time." For once, everyone agreed. The chamber was failing. The archive was failing. The entire underground complex was failing. Another bell echoed through the stone. Once. Deep. Ancient. The sound seemed to come from beneath their feet. Closer, this time. Much closer. Harold stared toward the widening crack. His expression had become distant, like a man looking at a memory. "I never thought I'd hear it." Lena looked at him. "Hear what?" Harold didn't answer immediately. The chamber groaned around them. Water continued disappearing into the darkness. Finally, he spoke. The warning bell. The words hung in the air. "The bell was real?" Evelyn asked. Harold nodded slowly. "At least that's what the stories called it." The stories. Of course. Every secret in Blackwater seemed to come wrapped in stories. Stories people dismissed. Stories people laughed at. Until they turned out to be true. Lena folded the map carefully and slipped it into her backpack. The witness list followed. Then the memorandum. Evidence, proof, if they survived. A violent tremor shook the chamber. This one stronger than the others. A section of ceiling collapsed near the doorway. Stone crashed into the water. The hidden room filled with dust. The men behind Marcus exchanged nervous looks. For the first time, they seemed less interested in the records and more interested in escaping. Then came another sound. Not a bell, not water. A voice, faint, distant, carried upward through the cracks. Everyone froze. The voice came again. Not one voice. Many, too many. Whispers. Hundreds of whispers. Layered together, impossible to understand, yet undeniably human. The sound drifted upward from the lower vault. Marcus looked horrified. One of his men took a step backward. Another crossed himself. The whispers continued, rising through the stone, growing louder. Not threatening, not angry, simply present. As though an enormous crowd stood somewhere below. Speaking all at once. Lena felt goosebumps rise across her arms. The sound was unlike anything she had ever heard. It felt less like hearing voices and more like standing near memory itself. Then the wall gave way. The crack exploded outward. Stone blocks tumbled into darkness. Dust filled the air. When it cleared, everyone could see. The lower vault. The chamber beyond stretched farther than the flashlight beams could reach. Ancient stone descended into darkness. Massive columns rose from below. Water cascaded into the opening like waterfalls. And everywhere, were shelves. Not dozens, not hundreds, thousands. An archive beneath the archive. A hidden world of records extending far into the earth. The sight stole everyone's breath. Lena stared. Unable to comprehend the scale, Harold whispered, "My God!" Even Marcus looked shaken. Nobody had expected this, not even the people protecting the secret. The lower vault was real, and it was enormous. Then Lena noticed something else. The shelves weren't filled with bones, or evidence, or property records. They contained books. Thousands of books, carefully preserved, carefully organized. A library, a hidden library beneath Blackwater County. The whispers continued rising from below, soft, persistent, like pages turning in a distant room. Harold moved closer to the opening. His face had gone pale. "I know what this is." Evelyn looked at him. "You've seen it before?" He shook his head. "No." His eyes remained fixed on the impossible chamber below. "But I've seen references." The bell rang again. The sound rolled through the vault. The whispers briefly stopped. Silence followed. Then Harold spoke, a single sentence, one that changed everything. "This wasn't built to hide the dead." The chamber seemed to hold its breath. Lena turned toward him. "What do you mean?" Harold swallowed, then looked directly at her. "The dead were hidden here later." His voice echoed softly through the collapsing room. "But this place," he gestured toward the vast library below, "was built to preserve something." The realization settled over everyone. The books, the records, the witness lists, the names, the maps, the ledgers. None of it had started as a cover-up. The cover-up had come afterward. Something older existed beneath it all. Something people had spent generations protecting, or trying to destroy. Then Lena's flashlight swept across the nearest section of shelves. A plaque mounted above one row caught the light. The letters were faded, ancient, yet still readable. She stepped closer, read it once, then again, just to be certain. Her heartbeat quickened, because the plaque didn't identify a section of the library. It identified the purpose of the entire vault. The inscription read, "The record of those removed." Silence followed. No one spoke. No one moved. Because for the first time since the flood began, they were no longer looking at a crime scene. They were looking at a history. One someone had buried beneath Blackwater County for a very long time. Top of form, bottom of form. Chapter 19, The Record of Those Removed. For several seconds, the only sound came from the water. It poured through the broken stone like a river reclaiming forgotten ground. The whispers had faded again. Not gone. Waiting. Lena stood at the edge of the opening, staring at the plaque. The record of those removed. The words seemed impossibly heavy. Not because they were dramatic, because they were precise. Removed, not lost, not missing, not forgotten. Removed, a deliberate act, a decision. Someone had chosen that word. Someone had carved it into stone. Someone had wanted future generations to understand the difference. Harold descended first. The old man carefully stepped onto a narrow stone staircase hidden within the wall. The stairs spiraled downward into the lower vault. Evelyn followed. Lena hesitated only a moment before joining them. Behind them, Marcus remained near the opening. His men looked uncertain. The entire structure continued shaking. The safest decision would have been to leave, yet none of them did. Because after spending generations protecting a secret, they finally wanted to see it. The descent seemed endless. The lower they traveled, the older the stone became. The craftsmanship changed. The walls no longer resembled county construction, or even 19th century construction. The blocks appeared hand-shaped, fitted together with remarkable precision. Built to last, built to survive, built to remember. Eventually, the stairs ended. The vault stretched before them. Lena's flashlight barely illuminated the nearest rows. The library extended far beyond the reach of light. Shelf after shelf, record after record, entire histories waiting in silence. A strange feeling settled over her. Not fear, not dread. Sorrow. The kind of sorrow left behind when people spend generations trying not to disappear. Harold approached the nearest shelf. His hands trembled slightly. He pulled down a volume, opened it, then stopped. His eyes widened. Evelyn immediately noticed. What? Harold slowly turned the book toward them. The pages contained names, thousands of names, but unlike the ledgers above, these entries were organized differently. Communities, families, relationships, languages, traditions, entire ways of life carefully documented. Not just people, cultures, records of existence. Lena stepped closer. One entry caught her attention. A settlement. Its location roughly matched modern Blackwater County. The date predated the county itself, predated the state, predated almost everything. The settlement no longer appeared on any map. Yet here it was, recorded, preserved, remembered. Harold gently closed the book. Now he understood. So did Lena. The hidden vault wasn't preserving death. It was preserving life. Everything that had existed before being erased. The realization struck with unexpected force. The murders, the camp, the cover-ups, the bodies beneath the ponds. Those were terrible, but they were recent. The true secret stretched much farther back. People had vanished from history. Not because they died, because they were removed from the record, renamed, reclassified, absorbed, forgotten. The vault existed because someone had refused to let that happen. A loud crack echoed overhead. Dust drifted from the ceiling. The flood continued tearing through the upper chambers. Time was running out. Then Lena noticed a desk. Unlike everything else in the vault, the desk stood alone, centered, intentional, a final workstation. Upon it rested a single book, much newer than the others. A final volume. Waiting. The cover contained no title, only a date. Lena's pulse quickened. She approached, opened it. The first page contained a list. Names, modern names, current names, people still alive. Witnesses, researchers, archivists, workers, keepers. Every generation had added its own chapter. And this book was theirs. The current chapter, their chapter. Daniel Mercer appeared near the top. Evelyn Cross, Harold Whitaker, dozens of others. Some Lena recognized, most she didn't. Then she saw her own name, Kailan Pitre. Her breath caught. The entry had already been written. Beneath her name sat a single sentence, "Witness to the opening." The words felt unreal, as though someone had known she would come, known she would find this place, known she would stand here. Then she turned the page. The next section was blank, empty pages waiting to be filled. At the top of the first blank sheet appeared a handwritten note, a simple instruction: continue the record. Silence settled across the vault. The meaning was obvious. The archive wasn't ending. It was being passed on. The flood, the exposure, the opening. These weren't the end of the story, only the end of the secrecy. Then a tremendous roar echoed through the underground complex, far louder than anything before. Water. A massive surge. The flood had finally broken through the remaining barriers. Harold looked upward. His face went pale. The basins. Marcus understood immediately. So do I. The two men exchanged a look. Years of conflict vanished in an instant. Both knew what was happening. Above them, the wastewater ponds, the lowest basin, Basin 4, the one built directly over the hidden chambers, the one holding decades of buried secrets. The final barrier had failed. Evelyn whispered, "It's coming down." The roar intensified. Stone trembled beneath their feet. Water cascaded from newly formed cracks. The underground world of Blackwater County had begun to collapse. And somewhere above them, the truth was rising to the surface. Chapter 20, Where the Water Keeps Secrets. The roar became deafening. Water thundered through the underground chambers. The ancient vault trembled as centuries of secrecy began collapsing around it. Dust filled the air. Books rattled on shelves. Stone groaned under impossible pressure. Above them, Basin 4 was failing, not leaking. Failing. Lena could feel it. The entire structure was giving way. Marcus looked toward the staircase. "We need to leave." Nobody argued. For the first time since entering the hidden world beneath Blackwater County, everyone wanted the same thing: survive. The witness box was secured inside Lena's backpack. The map, the memorandum, the modern record. Enough evidence to change everything, if they got out. The four of them hurried toward the stairs. Water poured down behind them. The lower vault continued disappearing beneath the flood. Lena looked back one last time. The hidden library remained visible through the darkness. Endless shelves stretching beyond sight. The record of those removed. A history preserved by generations who refused to let memory die. Then another collapse shook the chamber. Stone crashed into the water. The vault vanished behind a curtain of spray. The moment was over. They climbed. Fast. The stairwell trembled beneath their feet. Cracks spread across the walls. Entire sections of stone had begun collapsing. Above them, the hidden room was already flooding. The archive beyond it wasn't much better. Boxes floated freely. Documents drifted through rising water. Generations of records swirled together. History literally escaping its containers. Then they heard something unexpected. Sirens. Faint at first. Then louder, much louder. Outside. Above ground. Dozens of them. The flood had reached the surface. They emerged into the upper archive just as another section of ceiling collapsed. Water exploded through. Everyone scattered. The hidden world beneath Blackwater County was dying. Lena pushed through the flooded aisles, past shelves, past records, past names. The archive had served its purpose. The secret was no longer hidden. The storm had decided that. By the time they reached the concealed entrance beneath the marsh, daylight had begun returning. The rain had finally weakened. Gray clouds still covered the sky, but the worst of the storm had passed. Outside, chaos waited. Emergency vehicles lined distant roads. Helicopters circled overhead. Sirens echoed throughout the county. And far beyond the marsh, near the wastewater facility, a crowd had gathered. People, reporters, deputies, emergency crews, everyone staring toward Basin 4. Lena followed their gaze. The sight stopped her cold. Part of the settling pond had collapsed. A massive section of earth had caved inward. The basin looked as though something enormous had punched upward from below. Mud covered everything. Water rushed through the breach and scattered across the exposed ground. Visible even from this distance were bones, thousands of them. The flood had done what generations of people could not. It had uncovered the truth. 3 days later, the story dominated every news outlet in the state, then the nation, then beyond. Archaeological teams arrived, forensic teams arrived, federal investigators arrived. Questions multiplied faster than answers. Officials resigned, records surfaced, more sites were identified. The map from the witness box proved accurate. The wastewater facility had only been the beginning. Excavations spread across Blackwater County, then neighboring counties, then farther. The deeper investigators dug, the more they found. Entire chapters of history hidden in plain sight. Exactly as the keepers had feared. Exactly as they had hoped. 3 months later, Lena sat alone at her kitchen table. The storm felt distant now. The flood felt distant. Yet its consequences continued unfolding. The witness box rested before her. Open. The pages inside had been digitized, preserved, protected, shared. The secret no longer belonged to a handful of keepers. It belonged to history. Her laptop displayed the manuscript she had spent weeks writing, not a news article, Not an investigation, a record, a witness account. The first page contained a title, Blackwater Grave, Where the Water Keeps Secrets. Lena smiled slightly, then reached for the final page, the last blank page, the page waiting for one final entry. She picked up her pen and wrote. The flood did not create the truth. It revealed it. The water remembered what people tried to forget. The names survived. The record survived. And now the story belongs to everyone. She closed the book. Outside, evening settled across Blackwater County. The marshes shimmered beneath fading sunlight. Birds crossed the horizon. The world continued turning, yet something had changed. Not the land, not the water, the silence. The silence had finally broken. And somewhere beyond the fields, beyond the drainage canals, beyond the shattered remains of Basin 4, the wind carried the scent of rain. Not a warning this time, a reminder. Some secrets stay buried because people hide them. Others stay buried because nobody asks where they were put. Blackwater County had learned the difference. And the water. The water remembered. Copyright 2026. Kailan Pitre, all rights reserved. Written by Kailan Pitre. Narrated by Bloodline Roots Audiobooks. Blackwater Grave and all characters, locations, and story elements are protected by copyright law. No portion of this audiobook may be reproduced, distributed, or recorded without written permission from the copyright holder. Bloodline Roots Publishing.